When you look at the map of China, it seems straightforward. A massive country stretching from the Pacific coast to the deserts of Central Asia. But what the map doesn't tell you is the astonishing complexity hidden beneath those lines and colors. China's geography isn't just about mountains, rivers, and plains. It's about power, history, survival, and strategy. Every border, every province, every geographical divide has a story behind it. A story that shaped the country into the global powerhouse it is today. Let's start with what most people miss when they see China's map: its natural barriers. To the west, the towering Himalayas act as a fortress, separating China from India and Nepal. These are not just mountains. They're geopolitical walls that have kept armies, cultures, and even trade routes isolated for centuries. Then there's the Gobi Desert to the north. Vast, dry, and unforgiving. It's not a place where civilizations thrive easily, and that's exactly why it became one of China's greatest defenses against invaders like the Mongols. The east, meanwhile, opens to the Pacific, where China's coastline became both its greatest opportunity and its greatest vulnerability. Now, the map also hides something else: the deep contrast between China's east and west. The eastern half of the country, home to cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, holds the majority of China's population and wealth. It's where the rivers flow, where trade booms, and where modernization has taken root. But the West? That's a different story. Sparse populations, harsh landscapes, and limited arable land make it one of the most challenging regions to govern. Yet this rugged terrain, Xinjiang, Tibet, Qinghai, is crucial. Why? Because it provides China with buffer zones, natural defenses, and massive resource potential. This brings us to something most maps won't show you: the invisible divide that runs across China. Draw a diagonal line from the northeast to the southwest, from Heilongjiang to Yunnan, and you'll see something fascinating. East of that line lies the heart of China, densely populated, agriculturally rich, and economically vibrant. West of it, you find deserts, plateaus, and mountains. Only about 6% of China's population lives there. That divide, known as the Hu Line, explains so much about China's development priorities. It's why infrastructure projects like the Belt and Road Initiative focus so heavily on connecting those underdeveloped Western regions to global trade. And speaking of trade, look closer at China's coastline. It's dotted with some of the busiest ports on Earth: Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Ningbo. But maps don't reveal the tension hidden here. These coastal cities face the South China Sea, a region teeming with disputed islands and strategic sea lanes. Control over these waters isn't just about territory. It's about access to trade routes, oil reserves, and military positioning. That's why the South China Sea has become one of the most contested regions in the modern world. China's artificial islands and naval presence there aren't random. They're carefully calculated moves to secure economic lifelines. Now, move inland, and you'll find another layer of complexity: China's rivers. The Yangtze and Yellow rivers are often called the cradle of Chinese civilization. But these rivers are more than historical landmarks. They're the arteries that keep the nation alive. The Yangtze powers massive hydroelectric dams like the Three Gorges, one of the largest engineering feats in human history. The Yellow River, on the other hand, tells a story of struggle. It's prone to floods and shifts, shaping how ancient dynasties rose and fell. What's remarkable is how China's geography has influenced its politics and culture. The country's vastness makes unity both essential and difficult. Maintaining control over such a diverse landscape means balancing dozens of ethnic groups, climates, and ecosystems. Tibet's high plateaus, Xinjiang's deserts, Inner Mongolia's grasslands, all require different approaches to governance. That's why China invests heavily in infrastructure and surveillance in its border regions. It's not just about security, it's about integration. And here's another thing maps never show you: the role of water scarcity. Northern China struggles with chronic water shortages, while the south enjoys abundance. This imbalance has driven some of the most ambitious engineering projects in history, like the South to North Water Diversion Project, which literally reroutes rivers to supply Beijing and northern provinces. It's an ongoing struggle that reflects how geography still dictates policy, even in the modern age. But perhaps the most fascinating part of China's map is how it shapes its relationships with neighbors. To the north lies Russia, once a rival, now a strategic partner. To the south, India, another giant, with whom China shares one of the world's most militarized borders. To the east, Japan and South Korea, economic competitors and historical adversaries. Every one of these borders tells a story of tension, trade, and shifting alliances. And beyond all this lies the sea, the gateway to global influence through initiatives like the Maritime Silk Road. What we often overlook is that China's map isn't static, it's evolving. Artificial islands are expanding its maritime reach. Infrastructure projects like railways through Central Asia are extending its influence westward. Even space, the final frontier, is becoming part of China's geographic vision, with satellite networks designed to map and monitor the globe. When you peel back the layers, the map of China becomes a living organism, constantly adapting, expanding, and protecting itself. It's a story of resilience against nature, ingenuity in the face of adversity, and ambition that stretches far beyond borders. From the fertile plains of the Yangtze Delta to the icy peaks of the Himalayas, every inch of China's landscape plays a role in its destiny. So next time you see a simple map of China, remember, it's not just geography you're looking at. It's the blueprint of an empire, the reflection of millennia of strategy, and the roadmap to one of the most dynamic nations on Earth. But let's go even deeper. Because China's geography isn't just about land and mountains. It's about how that land shaped civilization itself. You see, China's geography almost dictated its destiny from the very beginning. When you study where the earliest dynasties appeared, the Xia, Shang, and Zhou, you realize something remarkable. They all rose in the fertile plains between the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. These weren't just random spots. They were natural cradles for agriculture, water supply, and trade. It's no accident that Chinese civilization developed in these river valleys. Geography chose where civilization could flourish, and that adaptability shows in the way modern China uses its land. For instance, the eastern seaboard is one of the most economically productive regions on Earth. Cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen aren't just big, they're strategically placed. Shanghai sits on the Yangtze River Delta, allowing it to connect inland trade routes with global shipping. Shenzhen lies near Hong Kong, benefiting from both its coastal position and its role as a tech and manufacturing hub. None of this is coincidence. Geography determined opportunity, and China capitalized on it. But if the East is booming, the West tells a different story. The government has poured billions into developing it, but progress is uneven. The Go West strategy, part of the Belt and Road Initiative, aims to change that by connecting the interior to the outside world. Imagine high-speed rail lines running through deserts and plateaus, carrying goods from inland factories all the way to Europe. These projects are reshaping not just China's internal geography, but global trade itself. What used to be the middle of nowhere is becoming the new crossroads of the world. Yet, for all its ambition, China's geography still creates tension, especially when it comes to resources. Water, for example, remains one of the most critical issues. Northern China produces much of the country's grain but suffers from chronic water shortages. Meanwhile, the south has plenty of water but less farmland. That's why the south-to-north water diversion project is so vital. It's one of the most expensive engineering projects in human history, rerouting entire river systems. But it also highlights how China's geography can't be ignored. It still dictates the terms of progress. Now, let's zoom out to a global perspective. China's position on the map places it at the crossroads of Asia, with access to both land and sea trade routes. But that also means it's surrounded by potential rivals. To the east, the Pacific Ocean connects it to the United States and Japan, two major powers with competing interests. To the south, the Indian Ocean connects to routes vital for importing oil and raw materials. To the west, Central Asia and Europe lie beyond vast mountain ranges. Every one of these directions poses both opportunities and risks. This is why modern China invests so heavily in infrastructure like ports, pipelines, and railroads across Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's about creating alternatives, routes that bypass choke points like the Strait of Malacca, which could be blocked in a conflict. Geography has taught China one painful lesson. Dependence on narrow routes means vulnerability. So now, it's rewriting the global map, one project at a time. Another invisible aspect the map doesn't show is how geography affects identity. Northern and southern China, for instance, are culturally and linguistically distinct. The north, dominated by the Yellow River Basin, has a more continental climate, cold, dry, with a history of wheat farming. The south, shaped by the Yangtze and Pearl River deltas, is humid, lush, and focused on rice cultivation. Even cuisine reflects this divide. Noodles in the north, rice in the south. These differences might seem trivial, but they've shaped regional politics and economies for centuries. The same goes for urban versus rural divides. While cities like Beijing and Shanghai look ultramodern, vast rural areas remain deeply traditional. The contrast is staggering. On one side, you have glass skyscrapers and bullet trains. On the other, villages that still follow agricultural rhythms thousands of years old. China's challenge has always been balancing these two worlds, modernization without losing cultural roots. Geography once again defines that struggle. And if you think modern technology has overcome geography, think again. Even today, natural barriers like mountains and deserts still influence how China defends itself, trades, and grows. The Himalayas make large-scale military conflict with India nearly impossible. The Gobi and Taklamakan deserts act as natural shields to the northwest. Meanwhile, the Pacific coast leaves China exposed to naval powers, which explains its growing naval expansion. Every military strategy, every trade route, every diplomatic move, still, at its core, comes back to geography. Even in environmental policy, geography plays a huge role. Air pollution, for example, tends to concentrate in northern cities like Beijing, where wind patterns trap smog between mountain ranges. In contrast, southern coastal cities benefit from oceanic breezes that disperse pollutants more easily. That's why environmental reforms often vary by region. What works in Guangzhou doesn't always work in Beijing. And if you enjoyed diving deep into this hidden side of China's geography, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there's a lot more the maps of our world aren't telling you, and we'll be uncovering them, one country at a time.